I think we're recording. Right.
Yes, we're now live.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Please note this meeting is being streamed live to the internet. Please could all members ensure their microphones set to mute unless they're speaking. Also, please ensure that any other devices nearby are switched to silent mode as they can be distracting. It's important to remember that you may only speak when called by me, the chair. Members should use the raise hand button when they wish to speak, and when it's your turn, I will call your name and invite you to speak. Okay, so first item, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, we do, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Brooke and Cutenius.
Thank you. And second item is declarations of interest. Are any? No, thank you. Moving on, the next item is the minutes of the previous meeting. Oh, sorry. Councillor Rolfe, did you?
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking for my raised hand, and in reaction, it only had a thumbs up, so that would be my raised hand today. Yes, I just, although I know it's not absolutely necessary, I'd just like to declare a personal interest in the High Street of New Romney, since I have a business there, and bearing in mind we're discussing town centres, etc. I think it's a caution to do, appropriate to do so.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gain. Oh, you're on mute.
Right. I'd like to declare the fact I'm a town councillor for Folkestone. So I declare that.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Are you happy for me to sign those as a correct record? Okay, there's no objections to that. Could you please, Kate, could get my signature added to those?
Certainly.
Thank you. And next is the minutes of the Finance and Performance Scrutiny Subcommittee. Are you happy for me to approve those as a correct record?
Yep, happy.
Yep. Thank you. Kate, can you do the same, my signature on those?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, the next item then is the Folkestone Town Centre regeneration, and Councillor Wimble is going to introduce that item. So over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good evening, fellow councillors. Thank you again for affording me the ability to bring this document to overview and scrutiny tonight. I'd like to take a few moments just to sum up what this is all about, and along with Hugh and Green and the other officers on hand, I'm sure they'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Firstly, this is part of the Emerging Corporate Plan 2021 to 2030 and comes under our banner of Creating Together Tomorrow, and recognises the reinvigoration of all the town districts, town centres, but particularly investing in Folkestone as a town centre and as our capital of the district. And the object really is built around the high quality place-led regeneration and to work alongside the superb work that's already been achieved to date, particularly in the Old Town and the town's growing strength in the leisure and culture activities, along with a very important creative economy. As you'll be aware, the council is working with key stakeholders and partners and communities to develop a Folkestone Place plan, which you're going to be discussing this evening. This will set out a vision and direction for Folkestone Town Centre, including necessary infrastructure and investment required to achieve sustainable change and deliver a first-class solution that encompasses every aspect of the town centre, including the traffic management and flow alongside retail and residential areas within the town centre. The council is being very ambitious with its plans. I think that's quite important, as this will affect the town for a number of generations and the opportunity to undertake a piece of work like this doesn't come along very often. So it's important, obviously, that we get it right. So we're trying to not only build a place which is based on the town's excellent connectivity, but also something that exemplifies the heritage that the town has and the culture, and of course realises that the town centres as we know them are a thing of the past. Looking at possible entertainment offerings are potentially one of the ways forward. This in itself recognised by the accolade it's in itself that the town is designated a music town and also regarded as a home of arts in general. With this vision, the town also needs to readdress the statement of its licensing policy so that this works hand in hand with the major potential changes to the town centre. You'll know that the council has had a lot of deliberation work and basically it's chosen the design specialists we made that who have been appointed to provide expert technical advice. We'd like the committee to comment on the content of this draft document, which as you see has been made even more relevant by the changes to our everyday lives by such things as COVID-19. And again, this in turn changes the way people are living within our community, both with living, working and playing in our town centre. As I said, Ewan and his officers are always there on hand to answer any technical questions. And I again, thank you, Madam Chairman, for the opportunity to introduce this evening.
Thank you very much. So we are invited to comment on the draft ambition and the approach being taken to develop the place plan. So over to members for questions and comments. Thank you. Councillor Wing.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for this piece of work. It's very good. And as you quite rightly says, every town centre in the country is struggling with this. We're not alone. I think the first thing we've got to do is look back and what makes Folkestone different to any other town. What makes it different? And I truly believe that what makes Folkestone different is what it's got to offer. We had an excellent, I know we all weren't there this afternoon, workshop by the Climate Change Group, and they come very rightly saying that we've got an excellent chance here. We've got some excellent walking paths and cycle paths, which fits very nicely into KCC's and the government's strategy of active travel. My first question, well, first of many questions, have you got any updates on the Lees Cliff lift? Because with the harbour development coming on apace now, obviously it's going to, I believe this has become crucial. So has anybody got any idea of any time scale for the Lees lift to be coming back into use again? Thank you.
Thank you. Would someone like to someone able to give us an update on that?
Chair, maybe if I pick that one up, and thank you,
Please.
Councillor Wing. I'm happy to provide a more full briefing for members in due course. But as you may know, that the lift has focused in some Section 106 contributions from the seafront development moving forward. There's a community interest company being established, which we think will perhaps play a role moving forward as well, and they are currently looking at fundraising opportunities. So I can't give you a timescale, but I'm very happy to engage with those who are involved and come back to you on that outside the meeting.
Yes, that'd be fantastic. Fantastic. I think every councillor want to know about this, because I do truly believe this is part of what is going to make, you know, the town centre something good. I looked recently before Christmas. There was a vegan market, very successful vegan market in a town centre, and I do believe once lockdown's all over, there will be another vegan shop opening up, a restaurant in the town centre. I think this is a good way to go. When you talk about niche shops in the old High Street, I mean, is that what you're thinking about in the High Street itself, in Sandgate Road, smaller shops rather than the large retails and things like that? And now, how far we got and what sort of interest we've got in bringing smaller shops into the Sandgate Road?
Thank you. If I can pick that up again, Chair. I think what we're reflecting there, Councillor Wing, is the transition in town centres and recognising that Folkestone has a real strength in local retailers and niche shopping as well. I think we all recognise the challenges around the scale of town centre retail cores and what's happening nationally around some of the major retailers. So our view is that whilst we want to encourage as strong a retail offer as possible, part of that will be encouraging local retailers and indeed spin-offs like the veganism market, which has resulted in some inquiries for these businesses to take shop units in the town centre. So that's part of the model we want to look at in terms of encouraging that local growth, which we say was a sustainable way forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And housing, is there any idea about housings and things? I mean, obviously we've got the harbour development going on, and that would be a lot of people down there. What about the Sandgate Road? I mean, it talks about sustainable housing and things like that. How is that looking? I mean, and what are the ideas and thinking around? I can understand probably with some opportunity for flats above the shops and things like that, but are they actually thinking about any sort of housing or anything?
Again, I think as part of a truly mixed use of the town centre and thinking about the transition, certainly an increased number of residential units in the town will absolutely come forward as some of the proposals. I'd anticipate that our engagement process will uncover a number of proposals around housing. Certainly, you'll be aware that the initial proposals around the Falca development include some residential, and there are other sites in the town. And I think moving forward, over the next 10 years, we would anticipate additional housing sites coming on. Very much about creating footfall and that kind of vibrancy in the town centre area to go alongside the retail offer, the leisure offer, and the other attractions we have in the town.
Great. While we're talking about sustainable transport and travel, I've seen certain surveys lately, but if people cycle or walk into town, they're much more likely to stay because they're not worried about car parking and hours. Is there any plans to increase cycle and think? I'm really thinking about the Click to Cycle scheme, which we've got an excellent scheme running in the summer. And is there any idea that we could perhaps put storage for bikes in the town centre? Same as we've got Folkestone West recently installed in Folkestone West Station, where people can cycle in, securely store their cycle and use facilities in the town centre. Have you had any ideas about that? And encourage more sustainable transport into the town centre from Hive and Sandgate and wherever.
A central part of the work to develop the plan will be around sustainable transport and access. And certainly part of the consultant team has a team of experts on board to look at not just traffic movements, but people flow, cycling and other and sustainable transport in the round. So without doubt, there will be proposals coming forward in the draft plan which cover that. In terms of some of the specifics you're talking about there, in terms of how we manage that, in terms of cycle storage, for example, I'm sure that will come out as well, because we can't have one without the other. We have to understand the strategic access issues and then how it practically will operate on a daily basis in the town.
Thank you. And another thing, I think we've all received emails today from residents about concern about the licensing policy and some of the people being used as part of the licensing policy. I mean, I know it's rumbled on about Lees quite a while ago, wasn't it, before lockdown and everything, and we're residents along the Lees, which, let's be faced, and Lees is a beautiful, I mean, I walk along the Lees quite often, and you've got the Grand and the Metropole, and you can understand why people want to come to Folkestone, because it has got some beautiful sort of attributes, and you look along the coast towards Hive, where you've got the bend, and it really is fantastic. What are the themes about late night entertainment, basically, after sort of 11 o'clock midnight? Have you got any sort of thoughts or plans about that, talking about the licensing policy?
Thank you, Councillor Wing. I think it's important to state at the outset that the work that will be developed through the place plan will inform the wider review of the district licensing policy, which is up for review this year and that would anticipate going through approval processes probably in late autumn. So this is not about setting the specific policy for the town centre. This is about informing that policy moving forward, and that policy will be subject to what you'd expect in terms of normal consultation and public consultation processes. I think it's too early to say what views are coming forward, but what we are asking the consultant team to do is provide us with a range of options, a range of potential solutions based on knowledge they'll bring from across the country. And in moving forward with the plan, there'll be a range of options to consider. But what we certainly feel is that whilst the plan itself will have a whole number of themes and projects around development, around environment, how people access the town, it has to also critically consider licensing policy as part of how the town operates in the future.
Well, of course. While we're talking about the strategy and engaging with the public, I mean, how's it going? I am a bit concerned of the timescale, obviously with COVID and everything. And I did like to say you put in the appendix 2 about trying to reach the seldom heard. I mean, how is it looking for the timescale for the public engagement survey? I mean, I'm a bit concerned it's too short because it's going to be difficult to reach some of the public. I mean, how's that doing?
I think at this stage, Chair, if you don't mind, I'll ask Lorraine Smith, my colleague, to come in and give an update on the engagement timetable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ewan. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. The expectation is we know that the current restrictions are going to require the team to deliver in more innovative ways. They have had examples of this, certainly last year. And what we have done with public engagement specifically is they follow, as you've seen in the engagement strategy. So it starts off with a series of workshops, and then we have a public event, and then we have another series of workshops, and then another public event again. The current time frame for the first public event is in March, and we are bound by the current restrictions at that particular point in time. But as I say, the team have had examples where they have run public consultation events similar to what we're looking to have during last year's lockdown as well.
Thank you. So can we say there is flexibility within the timescale if COVID restrictions don't allow your public events?
So I think we would look at innovative ways to be able to deliver the public event so that everybody still has the opportunity to have an input to the place plan development. That's very much the expectation.
Okay, well, just to finish off, some other councillors speak something. Don't forget, we have declared a climate emergency, and I think this Folkestone Town Centre could be part of this. I mean, gone beyond the history of the town, we've got Sandgate and everything, and it's so easy for people to reach. Once the lift is open again, it opens up a world of possibilities for people and to move around, and staycations, and that's what the Prime Minister and things are talking about now, staycations, people staying in this country. And we're so lucky to live in such a beautiful area of the country. And that's it, really. I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to say anything to that. If not, that's my lot. Thank you.
Councillor Wimble, did you want to come in?
I was just going to say, yes, we have declared a climate emergency. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're taking so much time about getting this right. As I said in my introduction, you only get a chance to do this once several generations, so it's very important we get it right. It's very important that we install a green message to anybody coming into the town as well, and I'm sure that the developers alongside the council and everybody else will take that into consideration and only move with the best possible practice.
Thank you, Councillor, thank you, Chair, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wing. Councillor Gain.
Thank you, Chairman. My question was actually partly asked by Councillor Wing, and that is about public consultation. When we are doing the Facebook and the Zooms, we're assuming everybody is computer literate, but there is an awful lot of people that do not have computers, certainly don't necessarily actually have them at home, and would probably at a public event would actually go and visit that public event. So how are we going to handle it at the moment? Because we have no sense yet as to what we're going to be able to do in next week, never mind 3 or 4 months' time.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I could take that, and thank you, Councillor again. It's a very good point to raise. And we do recognise that we need the consultation to be inclusive. Therefore, if there's a need for us to provide, whether be it paper copies or a different way of engaging to ensure we reach as many groups as possible, then we'll do so. And what I'm hoping is that through the initial consultation stages, we'll establish if there are a number of groups or individuals who would need to be engaged in a different way. We will be doing that because we will have certainly a number of press releases, social media releases, and our website flagging that up to individuals and groups. So while we do recognise absolutely the need to ensure that we are as inclusive as possible to get the broadest range of views to create the outcome of the plan. Thank you.
Can I just ask a supplementary, Chairman?
Please.
I do welcome what you're saying, but again, when you're doing things through the media, through computers, etc., which is the easiest way of getting lots of people, it is that missing out group that we're talking about that would normally, if you have a public event, they actually go to that event if they get to know about it. But as you know, certain things dominate the news and other things take a back seat. So it is actually reaching everybody to let them know. And one way you might be able to do that might be when you send the council tax bills out by putting something in the post with people's council tax bill. That might be one way around it that will get everybody.
Thank you. And I can assure you, Councillor Gain, we are engaging with as wide a range of groups as possible. So we would hope that in any event, there will be word of mouth and representatives from groups feeding back into the process as well. So if individuals can't engage, their voice will be heard.
Thank you. Councillor Carey and then Councillor Rolfe.
Hi, I've been jotting down a few things. I'm just going to take my hand down so I don't forget that. And obviously we're at the start of the process here, not at the end. And if anyone's listening from the Lees Residents Association, you are specifically listed as one of the stakeholder groups that will be consulted, although I notice it's the Lees Residents Association, one resident, not more than one, but I'm sure they'll listen to all the residents who are part of the association. Obviously, we as members, as councillors, have a role to play in trying to reach out to people and involve them. And I always make the point to the areas I represent, which are not towns, that it's really important for us to have a thriving town in Folkestone, because if it's in trouble, it drags the whole district down. If it's doing well, it's of benefit to all of us. And I was delighted to hear Councillor Wimble refer to Folkestone as the capital of the district, because quite often down on the marsh, they throw potatoes or other things at Folkestone and say things only happen in Folkestone. Well, we know that's not true, but most of our residents for Folkestone and Hythe actually live in Folkestone. It's a really important place. It's a lovely place. And if you ask about what's different about it, I think it's its setting by the sea. And I think that is something that makes it just fabulous in terms of being contained on one side, so that you've got this hard boundary, which is also a beautiful boundary, so you know that it's never going to be encroached on. And I think that makes it very special. And one of the things I've always valued about Folkestone, and I know the older people in the whole district do, is the way you have these flat walks along the Leas that older people can do to keep physically active, and the fact that the Leas doesn't have is actually forbidden to bicycles, so you can walk along there when you're quite frail and not expect to be bowled over by somebody who's going fast. So I think that's one of the special places that we should try and keep for the future. Now, obviously, you're going to be trying to balance up everybody's views. And I think it's actually quite an opportunity that this is all happening during COVID, because I recall some of the public exhibitions we had for Otterpool Park were made completely unbearable by people who were opposed to it coming along and dominating and being very unpleasant. And people who'd actually come along to find out about what was going on went away again because there was no room for their voices, and it was quite an unpleasant process. And they did that with just about every exhibition that was going. And I think there are ways to actually reach out to people who wouldn't normally take part in a consultation like this. And I think we should be looking to be very proactive about this. And I was quite surprised we didn't have on the list of stakeholders schools, because we are looking to the future, and the young people who are growing up, they are the ones for whom we want to make a town where there's sufficient power, staying power, for our youngsters to want to stay here and dedicate and be happy here, have a very fulfilling life here, and not feel that they need to leave in order to get a good job, to enjoy their lives, to have a home. So I would like to see more done with the schools. I think you could do workshops. I have taken part in some really interesting platforms that allow breakout rooms and chatting on tables, and the technology is out there, and I think we need to make use of it. I do wonder whether the time has come again for the land train, because I'm thinking we talk a lot about active travel, but we do need to remember the people who can't power themselves on bicycles. And the land train was tried. It didn't quite work then. It didn't get enough business, but it might be that its time has come again, because that would link along the wider coast and into other communities. So I'd like us to think about those sort of options as well. I wonder whether we need to shrink the retail and restaurant area, because we are very spread out. And it's not to say we couldn't spread out again later, but it seems to me that there's an opportunity to maybe regroup around a tighter area so that we can do a smaller part really well. And on the matter of the environment, it's a really big opportunity to green the town. We've talked about green roofs for our own estate. There's plenty of room in the town for green roofs, for window boxes, for green corridors wherever we can, and water as well, to have some blue assets as well as green assets, and always with when we're doing things like that, to think about the movement of wildlife, not having lollipop trees which are difficult for wildlife to move from unless they're actually bees or other insects. So not just street trees, but obviously street trees are important. Folker, I think that's really important for our future, because it belongs to us as a district council, and it's an opportunity for us to showcase what we want the rest of Folkestone to be like. I hope the NHS are enjoying their time there and will want to have some sort of health facilities there for the long term, if not a vaccination centre, but maybe a medical centre. And I know there's plenty of room for loads of things to actually happen in Folker. And I think that was it. Yes. So I'm really excited we're doing this. I think it's great, not just for Folkestone, it's good for the whole district, and it's a real opportunity to give the town a direction that will be of benefit to it and everyone who lives locally for the long term. So thank you, officers, and I wish you every success, and I'd be delighted to promote the things that you are doing and direct all of our residents to try and take part in your consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rolfe. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I lowered my hand and didn't unmute, technically. I think this is an excellent piece of work, and I'm sure all of us will be very, very excited to see it develop and evolve over time. I've got a number of observations now and some questions. Only a few years ago, the then Shetway District Council undertook a very detailed piece of work in creating a destination marketing plan. Very capable consultant, Sarah Loftus, engaged with a lot of key stakeholders. A large document was produced and it was thrown out by the then cabinet. I hope that all the work that we do on this will not meet the same fate. Just like a little explanation, if there is are there any major differences between a destination marketing plan as was created for the whole district and a place plan? Effectively, they're both looking at the character of the place and how you can market it. And the other thing linked to that, if we've got that body of work in the background, I hope we're also using that as a touchstone for what the character of the area across the whole district then, and using some hopeful nuggets of information and updating them, because that, if not, that would be a lost opportunity. I do believe this approach is absolutely fantastic, and obviously it links with the 2.2 million allocated for Folkestone, and rightly so. Of the £3 million available, the majority went to the capital of the district. Very good phrase. So you're often saying capital of Romney Marsh with New Romney, so it's good to see that actually, yes, the district and Folkestone is vital to the overall well-being and prosperity of the whole area. But again, I feel this fantastic, strategic, considered approach that's being taken in Folkestone, using that 2.2 million, is a lost opportunity that the remaining 800,000 is effectively being distributed, although to very good end sources, in a more ad hoc way. And it is a shame we couldn't have seen that more considered approach across all of the towns, but maybe we can going forward, and I'll put that in Councillor Wimble's court to consider through the various, because I do think we've got a lot of wonderful centres across the area, Hythe, Sandgate, etc., and they all need careful consideration. So maybe this can be the touchstone from which other ideas and other centres can develop. I'd like to see connectivity in all its guises very much embedded in this. I know connectivity is mentioned, but it needs to encapsulate transport, links between people, and particularly different sectors of the community. And so how do we actually break down barriers to connectivity to link up those different sectors? Because that's important. A cohesive community is a positive community. And also digital connectivity, because we'll be using this place plan and marketing it in so many different ways. And obviously having, for example, an app showing different locations in Folkestone, etc., will be really key in it. But if you've got black spots in sort of fibre network, etc., then that again causes the barrier to actually optimising the impact of what will be done. As a general comment, I think we need to capitalise on Folkestone's proximity to Europe. I know that might be an interesting observation, given we just left Europe per se with Brexit. Actually, our geographic link is still important, and especially going forward post-COVID. and all the links via Eurotunnel and the sea and everything else. And there's opportunities for economic development with the harbour. And I believe in the past, Councillor Whipple had some very interesting ideas regarding charters, etc. So there's, again, another angle, another element of Folkestone's character. And I call it the Golden Coastline, Golden Gateway, both to Europe, but also to the rest of, from Europe to the rest of the country. I totally agree with Councillor Carey's very positive recommendation about involving schools. When we developed the new Romney socioeconomic plan, one of the things that the then DCLG really liked about what we were doing was we actually had two workshops with the senior pupils of the Marsh Academy. We gave them an opportunity to do a SWOT exercise. And there was a blank page. We didn't actually steer them in any way. We said, what would you like? What are the threats? What are the opportunities you see? What would you like here to make you want to stay living here? And it was, some of the ideas were new, but they also echoed very strongly some of the ideas that the separate adult workshop had also put forward. So it does actually add a very interesting dynamic to the work if you do engage with young people. Because as Councillor Carey said, we are creating this now, but this is for the future. This is to keep our young people living here, working here, and obviously to bring new people into the area. And I'll just remind people about connectivity. I'm sure for those who remember when the seafront scheme was really in its embryonic stages, Lord Foster had developed a scheme, and there was an idea of having a large escalator going from down on the beach area up to the town to link the two areas, which, as we know, have some connectivity challenges. So maybe that could be revisited. But all in all, very, very positive, and just appreciate a couple of answers to a couple of the issues I raised. But well done, everyone who's been involved in the work so far.
Thank you. Councillor Wimble, did you want to come in?
I'd just like to pick up on a couple of bits before I leave the technical answers to Ewan. First of all, Councillor Rolfe mentioned the High Street grant. Let's not confuse that High Street grant with what we're trying to do here. That was pretty much for a short-term, immediate fix to help businesses improve for the now. We're looking forward to generations going forward. So that £3 million that we made available to help high street businesses will be a drop in the ocean to the amount of money that's going to be needed to get this done properly. People have mentioned about the flow of people. That's obviously one of the things that we made that we'll be looking at. I can see that in my lifetime, certainly the way we move around towns will be very different. We won't be all going in cars so much. So I think there'll be more work being done about pedestrianising the town and the flow around a town hub as well, which we don't currently really have a hub. We're very lucky in Folkestone that we've had Roger DeHaan invest so much money through his foundation down in the harbour area, which was always the weak link of the town, which is now seen as one of the big go-to destinations. And the harbour arm is one of the most visited destinations in the southeast. More people go there than Canterbury Cathedral. And in the summer, of course, we can have the Area 51 skate park opening. That will draw people from all over Europe into Folkestone. So, we've got to get this right. We've got to show them that we are a destination that people not only want to work in and visit, so to live here as well. So I think, we're going to get there. We just got to get the plans right, because as I mentioned in my introduction, you only get one chance at making a first impression on something as major as this. So if I hand over to you and he can answer.
Councillor Rolfe, my apologies, I lost connection for a second or two there. Could you just remind me of the couple of points you'd like me to come back on?
Yes, it's just basically, are we using the old destination marketing plan in any way to feed into some of the work that we're doing here. It was quite a large body of work, and it would seem a shame to let it go to waste. And that was the main thing, really.
In the short answer is yes. I think that any previous work that we've had on any theme, we've put together in a document library for the consultants. And as you'll notice from some of the objectives, tourism is very much part of where a key theme for us to cover. And certainly in the engagement, we'll be engaging with local tourism groups as well. So yes, definitely, I think that in the tourism piece will be central to one of the key themes, and certainly work that's been already done in the council can be considered.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor McConville.
Thank you. Yeah, a few other points to add. I mean, a lot of my sort of questions and concerns have already been covered, but I'll just start with the infographic, if you like. Just a few points on that. It's obviously, very sort of high level, which is understandable. I think under capitalising on the music and arts talent, I think another key thing there should be the Leeds Pavilion, the Leeds Club. That was one of the main reasons that the public have got behind that development is is retaining that historic space, and I think it would be fitting that we keep remembering that that's going to be part of the town and part of the sort of the cultural makeup of the town, eventually when that comes online. So I think that should definitely be included there. And under heritage, I mean, only a few things there. I think we possibly put in a few more points there. I mean, we are a harbour town. We have very strong harbour heritage, and things as well, such as St Eanswyth's. All that history and heritage linked with that, I think is just as valuable as some of the other ones that you've got listed there. It does say the Bale, but maybe if it was a bit more specific, because obviously people might not necessarily link the two. And in terms of championing the food and drink scene, as a chef myself, I think it'd be good to see something in terms of trying to promote entrepreneurship, new businesses. I mean, the idea when the Harbour Arm was first sort of put forward was that it would be an incubator for future businesses. People could go in there, have a little pop up, try out an idea, see if it works, and then obviously move on to bigger and better things. I mean, sadly, as Councillor Wimble said, it has become so popular that it's just the same people pretty much in there, and it's not really worked in its sort of original function, which is fine. But I think there really could be a need, and I think it would be very successful somewhere in the town where you could have a little street food type pop up, of its original intention, where you're in there for a limited amount of time, you have an idea, you see if it works, and then hopefully that will go on to create further business in the town. And obviously under protect our community, I mean, it does mention a new medical provision, but I mean, there could possibly be a separate section, on health and well-being separate from the community and the voluntary sector and all the great work that's come out of that, especially over the last year. The residents and people of Folkestone have really sort of stepped up, and just as they have across the country. So I think you could probably have health as a completely separate sort of little subheading in that infographic. So that was my points on that. In terms of the engagement, I'll echo, especially Councillor Gaines' sort of points on, people not being sort of connected, as it were, and thinking it maybe outside the box in terms of ways to notify people and engage people. Maybe have a word with the managers of the supermarkets, around the district for getting notices and things like that. You'd be surprised how many people you still see stood in front of a notice board in a supermarket shop. Could be one possible idea. But one of the key questions, I guess, is sort of quite a basic one. You know, what is Folkestone Town Centre? You know, what is the area that we are looking to address with this plan? You know, is it just the High Street? Is it the High Street and Guildhall Street? I mean, is it the zone that was sort of defined in terms of awarding the town centre grants? So I think that's quite a, you know, I think if you want to do any piece of work, you really need to be very, you know, specific in where that work is going to take place. So I didn't know if that is known as yet. I mean, that might not be something that's been completely nailed down yet, but it'd be good to know where we are in terms of that that sort of basic starting point.
Thank you.
Will I come back on that final point there?
Please do.
Thank you. And lots of points there, Councillor McConnell. Thank you very much. I think in terms of drawing a red line, we're trying not to be too prescriptive, recognising that the town centre has, I think, you know, some natural sort of curtlages, if you like. We're cognizant also of the local plan, the core plan, which has specific boundaries in it and things like retail cores. But certainly, I think the idea is to be as flexible as possible, but recognising that it is the town centre, it isn't the wider area of Folkestone. But the important thing is that the town centre has to connect the rest of Folkestone, how and vice versa. So I think you're right in your assertion that we haven't really tied it down to a very hard and fast red boundary, with the intention that that flexibility will allow that broader thinking.
Thank you. And then, yeah, finally, I guess just perhaps a little bit more background information would be quite helpful in sort of, you know, how we sort of got a good idea of where we're going now, but I guess maybe just, you know, how we've got here. Obviously, there's been, you know, work in the town centre working group, for example, but obviously, you know, people on this committee aren't involved with that. So, you know, a little bit of the process of sort of, you know, where this sort of started from, how you know, how we got involved in issuing, in bringing on board We Made That, you know, how many sort of different firms were sort of being looked at, you know, what was it about that particular firm that really sort of, you know, stood out, and we believe that they were the best people to sort of take this forward. If anyone could just a brief sort of summary, I guess, of the work, I mean, at least that I know of over the past sort of year, just sort of keeping my ear to the ground in terms of what the town centre working group has been doing.
And thank you for that point also. I'd be very happy to send members a couple of pieces of information. We will be doing some wider communication to all members, just giving some of that background. So happy to do that. We've also established a web page on the council website, which has a bit of that background and some of the recent press releases as to the outcome of the tender process, and We Made That coming on board. So I'll be able to direct members to that, but also quite happy to give a little bit more context in a written response, just as to the, you know, why we're here, why we're doing this, and the process.
Okay, thank you. I think that'd be very helpful for a lot of people.
Thank you. Any other members wish to speak? Okay. I would just perhaps add, agree with Councillor McConville on the heritage section on the infographic. It seems a sort of a slightly odd collection of places sort of mentioned, and I would like to see a broader sort of reflection of just how broad our heritage and how rich and diverse it is. Maybe not necessarily naming places, but, you know, perhaps the sort of themes that encompass so much of it. Just an observation as well, that on the picture at the top of that, we have got not one but two cars, no people, no bicycles that I can see. So might be one to have a look at, I would suggest. Okay, if there's no other comments, questions, then I propose that we receive and note this report. If I can have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Rolfe. So unless there's any objections, then that will pass. We can move on to the final item for this evening, which is the tenant engagement strategy and action plan. And we have Councillor Godfrey with us this evening, who's going to introduce that. So over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Shub, and good evening, members. This is a first draft. This report is a first draft of our tenant engagement strategy, which we'd like you to have a first look at and comment on before we go out to consultation. Following that consultation, we'll bring it back to you before going to Cabinet. The Housing Service, when we took over in the 1st of October, were well aware that we need to start developing an effective tenant engagement strategy. And there are, of course, regulatory requirements requiring this. The tenant involvement and empowerment standards ensure that we should be able to provide an evidence, a proactive tenant engagement plan. And you will recall on our original vision for our housing service, we put the tenants at the heart of this. The 2020 Housing White Paper, Charter for Social Housing, builds further on this following the Grenfell Tower incident. And part of that document is important to tenant engagement is the have your voice heard by your landlord. So the focus is on the tenants very much. We've been working with TPAS, the Tenant Participation Advisory Service, professionals involved in this across the country, also with our existing tenant and leaseholder board and our own staff to start developing this strategy document for consultation. Elaine Bostock, who's the current chair of the board of our tenants and leaseholders, has given a really positive statement for the forward of the strategy document. And much of it, the focal part of it is the engagement structure that you'll find on page 10. And this really looks at 4 tenets. The tenant's voice, which is a formal strategic group of involved tenants, building on the tenants and leaseholders board we have today. And they have had and will continue to have regular meetings with the Director of Housing and Operations and the Cabinet Member for Housing. And this will be used to hold council's account for the housing services. Your choice, because not everybody wants to become involved in a formal committee, is a wider group of tenants, and we've reached out to a large number of tenants to ask if they would like to be involved and give a view, and got some really positive responses. This work stream will include smaller groups of tenants who come together to do specific tasks, such as reviewing a particular service or area. And I think this is where, in fact, ward members can certainly get involved. There's Your Choice Plus, which is more passive engagement, seeking in views by way of satisfaction surveys, gathering information on social media, polls, etc. And finally, Business Insight, which is gathering together all the information from all these sources and making sure we've got a good handle on it, and that we can use that to develop and continue to develop the excellent housing service we want to. So, earlier in the piece on the last subject, there was mention of social media and technology. What I can tell you is already some of our staff have equipped the Tenants and Leaseholders Board with tablets and helped them to come to grips with using those. And that's a good way forward for us. So I will very much welcome your comments. We have officers on hand to Helen Sudbury, who's our lead specialist in housing, and the 2 directors, assistant director and director, to answer any questions you've got. And I welcome your comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, so over to members. Councillor Wing and then Councillor Gain.
you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the document. It's a very honest document. As you quite rightly say, it's a start. It's really nice to have a chance to have a look at something in its infancy and help develop it. And I really do appreciate it. My first question, it talks about performance indicators. Have you got any idea what these performance indicators will be? I'm particularly talking about complaints and compliments, and how will they be involved in these performance indicators, please?
Helen or one of the officers to respond to that with the detail. Thank you.
I can respond, Chair. That's okay. Yes, as part of the housing service, we do a lot of gathering of information of our performance, and we've got a whole performance booklet. And this is the sort of information we want to be able to share with tenants in a bit more of a condensed form than we would go through in terms internally, but certainly to make sure that the actual performance that we do in terms of like our rent arrears, our relet times, our compliancy issues are reported on a regular basis, and we want to be able to share that with tenants and residents.
So that is including complaints and it will be including complaints as well, will it? All complaints?
Yes, Councillor, that's right.
It will be. Good, I'm pleased about that. And I'm also pleased to hear that you are including sort of tablets and things and giving training to some of the staff about, you know, coming through. That's very good. I mean, it says about satisfaction surveys and local and tenant wide. I mean, I think a good question is, I mean, how are they looking at this? You know, you say there's going to be one tenant, is that to each block or each, you know, each area or what?
Not necessarily tenants' representatives, but it will be people who are coming forward themselves. Obviously, if people want to be on the strategic group, the Tenants' Voice group, they will need to make sure they are speaking not just on behalf of themselves, but on behalf of a wider group of tenants. But there are individual tenants who want to be involved in all manner of activities, and so they necessarily wouldn't be representing a larger group.
Mm. And would you be trying to encourage a representative from each area sort of thing, rather than just one for Folkes and one for Hive and places like that? Would that be right in saying? Doing your best to try to encourage that, taking part in it?
Certainly we want to encourage people from all over the district, you know, from all backgrounds, and make it as inclusive as possible, yes.
Yeah, but as I said, I'm very pleased with this, and thank you for bringing it to our attention so quickly. And I think it's important that it is not only fed back to the tenants, back to all the members and this committee. I think this committee will be taking a very active look at this and how it develops and goes in the future. Thank you very much. It's a very good piece of work. Well done.
Thank you. Councillor Gain.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I welcome 2.5 in the report when it talks about barriers to engagement, to recognise there is some issues and to go out your way to try and solve those issues, to try and make the participation as wide as possible. I really do welcome that. And as you said, doing the laptop and some training is a start of doing that. But that was one thing when we had our meeting, when East Kent Housing was coming to an end, that the tenants there made that point, that they felt there was like an annual valuation, it was under the council before. Let's hope we can change their minds completely.
Thank you for that. Councillor McConville.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'd also echo Councillor Wing's sort of thing. It's great to have this document, you know, at a very early stage. You know, it was sort of something I was very sort of keen to make sure was still in place when we took over the housing service, was, you know, that not only sort of keeping what was already existing in terms of, you know, what the residents had under East Kent Housing, but obviously to, you know, to take that forward and improve it. And you know, there's some good things in that document, you know, that sort of says that we're going that way. I mean, for me, I mean, let's say I see the you know, the board as the key sort of conduit between, you know, our tenants and us as the landlord. You know, so I think it'd be great to see if the council really sort of, you know, foster that board and try to make it as functional as possible. Let's say in terms of, you know, expand, you know, maybe trying to expand the membership there, trying to see if people will engage in all parts of the district. You know, representatives from sheltered housing. I know there are some from some on there. I mean, the short time that I sort of was communicating with the board, I know there are people from some sheltered housing schemes, but it'd be great if, you know, if every scheme if every scheme that we had was able to send someone to that board. You know, ideally, I guess I see the board, I would hope eventually becoming, you know, a recognised outside body that would have, you know, a sort of formal representation from the council, as we do with other sort of outside bodies, just to make sure that the links there are, you know, are strong, and there's that continuous flow of information. And to I think to sort of the board I see has sort of two sort of roles. One is that more sort of formal role of getting you know, communication between residents and us as the landlord, but you know, their role also to sort of try and promote those other sort of options that you're looking to bring in terms of the you know, the your choice or the your choice plus, trying to sort of promote that out there for, you know, as Councillor Godfrey rightly said, I mean, that there will be some residents that want to get really quite involved. The ones that I've spoken to generally, you know, had or do have a career sort of in the trades, and they like to get involved in, you know, the contractors and procurement and things like that. But others will, you know, want to be involved, but not in a more formal way. So I think they, you know, there really is quite a key role for that body to really try and push for that. And I think there'll be quite a lot of work needed from us as the landlord, and from them as the sort of the formal body of representing the residents to make this plan work. So that hopefully, like I say, we'll be able to achieve everything in this document, and we'll have a let's say a really fantastic housing service as we all would like.
If I may, Chair. Has anybody else? Sorry. Oh, yes. Sorry, Councillor Rolfe.
Yeah, Councillor Rolfe, and then come back to Councillor Godfrey.
I'd just like to observe that I think that the excellent housing team and Councillor Godfrey, Andy B and everyone have definitely hit the ground running at a considerable pace, having taken on the monumental task of rehousing our housing stock, I suppose. And we've seen, obviously, we've had our various training sessions, and we know there is a lot to do and a lot to be done because of the condition of some of the stock that we've taken on and going forward. I do think going forward, because obviously we want to, as this council tends to do, wants to be an exemplar in all areas, and in this area, rightly so. So I think we're not going to only be judged by how we tackle the quality of the housing stock, bringing the existing stock up to standard, and also creating new stock. Obviously, how we engage with our tenants and our relationship, and how we develop that partnership working, which will be the sort of actually crucial to the success, because the ongoing communication between the council and its tenants, I think, will be absolutely critical. And I think the work that's been done here provides a really good mechanism for us to do that. But I do think also that, you know, our responsiveness to the issues raised through the various forums will also be KPI, if you want to call it that, because, you know, they can raise a query, they can raise a concern, they can raise a suggestion, and it's the mechanisms we use to then possibly evaluate and then potentially implement the good ideas and address the key issues. But no, I think this is a very good body of work. It gives us a strong base on which we can go out, go forward, ask all the right questions, gather all the right people to take part. But again, as always, a challenge is to get to those people who tend to be not want to take part, and how do you actually get their views and find out how, you know, what they would like to see. And that's a challenge across all areas. So good luck is what I'd say on that one.
Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely reiterate the importance of the seldom heard, as we spoke about in the last item. Councillor Godfrey, did you want to come in now, or shall I go to Councillor Mullard?
Go to Councillor Mullard. I'll just sum up afterwards, if you may.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mullard.
Thank you, Chairman. You can hear me. I am unmuted. Yeah. Just to show that I am alive, I will make a couple of comments. It's extremely important, and the document is very good. It's extremely important to know that this is a tenant. It's tenant engagement, and that word is important. Engagement, not any sort of a takeover. It's engagement. Two ways, and there are the need of a kind of a formal body. I'd even go along with a recognised outside body, but the idea of a formal body is the two ways of looking at it. Do we say, for instance, that Romney Marsh would have 2 tenant reps and Hythe would have 2 and Folkestone would have 6, making 10 altogether? Or do we say, no, let's base the tenant representatives on the number of tenancies within a particular area? Some areas have got many more than other areas. So 2 ways there. It is important that full engagement is held, not only to adhere to government guidelines and government rules, but to give tenants a genuine voice, and that's an important word throughout this document, voice. But we have to be a little bit careful, and I'm a bit of a devil's advocate, we have to be a little bit careful that it doesn't turn into a tenant's demand. It's not that, it's a joint involvement with tenants giving reasonable input that the council can listen to and engage meaningfully. That was my only little devil's advocacy, if you like, the definition of involvement and engagement has to be looked at pretty closely, and not just under government guidelines. Now I can go back to sleep again, Chairman. That was all.
For that, Councillor Godfrey. Unless anyone else wants to come in, I'll ask Councillor Godfrey to sum up.
Thank you. Just before I sum up, Helen, would you like to make a comment on the point that Councillor Mullard make about gathering representations right across the district?
Yes, Councillor. We hadn't thought about it in terms of having definite representatives for a number of people. We are looking for people with the sort of skills and enthusiasm to be able to bring, you know, all of that to the new groups, in fact. But we're very mindful that we want to involve as many people as possible. And the previous speaker mentioned about the Older Persons Forum, which is still very active and would be much more active if we hadn't got COVID at the moment. So we're very, very much bringing those groups along as well.
Thank you. Yes, by reaching out to as wide a audience as possible and reaching out as many of our tenants as possible, that will help us shape and answer some of the questions that have been well raised here. I really want to thank all of the councillors for your input, and unless my officers want to say any more, we will now take this out to consultation, taking on board some tweaks, I suspect, from the input tonight, and come back to you with the results of that consultation. Did either John or Andy wish to say anything, and Helen anything else? Otherwise, I'm going to thank you and say good night.
I'm happy just to come in for a quick moment. And thank you, Councillor Godfrey. I think you summed up really well, and thank you, councillors, for all your input this evening. Just wanted to stress the point of bringing this here so early, which I think you have recognised, was especially following the member training and the vision that we brought to you some months ago now, which clearly set out that tenants were at the heart of everything that we do and everything that we will do going forward. And the point of this, and I'm very pleased actually with the comments that we've had back about this, is to get that truly representative view from our tenants right across the housing stock. So we've got people that want to be involved a little bit, people that want to be involved more formally and a lot and have more time on their hands, and get that truly representative view right across the housing stock, which will really help us develop that. And hold us to account. That's the point of the white paper, and following on from the member training that we did over the last couple of weeks. That's really sort of setting our stall out, and it was really good to be able to be in a position to bring this to you whilst that training was still fresh in the minds, to really set our stall out and how we plan on moving forward. So I won't take up any more of your time. I'll stop talking, but just thank you all for your input, and thank you, Councillor Godfrey, and thank you, Helen, who's done a lot of the work.
Absolutely. I was just going to say thank you to all the officers, not just the three directors, two directors and the lead specialist, but I know all of our staff have contributed to this. So I would like to thank the whole housing team who are really behind us all the way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to propose then that we receive and note this report. I could have a seconder.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Gain. Right, so unless there's any objections, then that is passed. I'd like to thank officers who've worked on both the reports that we've had this evening, two hugely important and topics for the whole district. So thank you very much for everyone for your time on that and for this evening. So with that, I'll close the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you,
Good
Chair.
night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.